Morning, everyone. I'm Ewan Anderson from 7N Architects. Also got Katie and Nicholas here from 7N as well. I'm going to talk about Fraser Avenue, which is a project we've been involved in for the past 6 years, right from the very, very earliest stages. And I think what's particularly interesting about this project is it's been a very, very holistic approach to, I suppose, what you call ground-up regeneration. I think it's a case of a wide group of organizations working in a very coordinated way and doing a lot of small things very well, and that adding up to a successful outcome. So although we are very pleased with the way master plan is developed and the way the architecture is developed, there's much more to Fraser Avenue than that. And I think that's where a lot of the lessons, I think, come out of this. And NDS have done an excellent case study on it, and also has been part of one of the Housing 2040 workshops as well. So that's drawn out a lot of these issues. Perhaps we can talk about them later. So this is Fraser Avenue in Inverkeithing, built in the 1950s to provide housing for local people. You can see it on the screen. I don't know if you can see the cursor. This is partly demolished, but Fraser Avenue ran from all the way down this road, right down to almost down to the Forth. Fantastic setting, and initially it was very successful. Some of the very first residents there when it was built in the 50s are still there, and they were great contributors to the engagement. But over the years, like many similar council estates, it's had many years of gradual decline, and in a way it became a kind of spiral in that actually there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, but there's a series of, you could say, poor tenancy policies. It's been poorly managed, and gradually it got a stigma about it, and it went downhill from there. This is a shot in the 1980s, and actually interestingly, the Stevens, the bakers and the grocers next door, they're actually still going, and they've been relocated in a new building. But that's the softer side of this whole project, which I think is, I'll keep coming back to it, but I think that's the most interesting lesson to come out of it. A lot of the physical issues with the estate were very apparent right from the very beginning. We originally got this commissioned we were invited to pitch for it, which we did, and part of that was looking at an analysis of what we thought was wrong with it and how we might approach that. And this is way before any engagement, but the issues with it were pretty clear. There was space was generally undefined. There was no sense of ownership. It was very ambiguous what space, how the spaces were defined, who had control of it, and there's really no real sense of belonging. I mean, these photographs are, could be in a great whole range of places within Scotland in the past 50 years, and a lot of these issues are quite commonly held. But with Fraser Avenue in particular, one of the fundamental structural issues, I suppose you could call it that, was basically Fraser Avenue was one big long street. We refer to it as, and latterly a number of the residents refer to it as a canyon. It was one way in, one way out for vehicles. There were a few odd lanes connecting it to the neighbourhoods to the east and west, but these were generally very narrow, pretty intimidating spaces, and nobody particularly wanted to use. And it was evident that there was need for something to not just renew it and improve it, because one of the biggest issues, actually the most acute issue, was actually the quality of the homes themselves, which were extremely damp, very difficult to heat. There was a lot of embedded health problems as a result of that. So, but from a structural perspective, it felt that there was a need to change perceptions for the people who lived there, as well as the other people within Inverkeithing, because it had become stigmatized. It had arguably become ghettoized, and people were almost saying, well, they didn't want to say they came from Fraser Avenue, which is a terrible state of affairs. Right from the very outset, and this was before any engagement, as I said, this is from the original bid in 2014, that there was a desire to make something kind of shifted the dial, and the main move, which is still there, and what is getting built today, was to actually split that long length of street in two and create a space right at the very heart of the community, right in the centre of it, and to open up connections to the neighbourhoods either side. I mean, these are not particularly revolutionary moves, but they're important. They were an important part of fundamentally shifting perceptions to basically drag Fraser Avenue out to that kind of negative place that it had gradually fallen into. And really the challenge at the very beginning was, how can you turn this from one of the least desirable places in Inverkeithing to one of the nicest places to live? That was before the engagement. We then got hired and we did exploratory work for Fife Council, who originally appointed us, but the engagement is a fundamental thing, I think, about the Fraser Avenue project. And you know, the images on the screen, you'll have seen hundreds of images like these before, with lots of post-its stuck on and people holding up sheets and sitting around tables and writing down what they like and what they don't like. And we did all that, and it was, you know, it was very successful in terms of getting some pretty clear outcomes of that. But I think the thing to say about Fraser Avenue in particular is that the engagement has carried all the way through, not just the engagement we did as part of the planning process to help inform the development of the master plan and to do the public consultation that was required by the planning process, but the engagement, and I'm really talking about what was taken on by Fife Council and by Kingdom Housing Association, ran all the way through and is still ongoing. And I think if I was to point to one thing that has really made a difference and lifted Fraser Avenue above what is generally achieved, I would say that's the thing. I'd like to claim credit for it being the master plan that we derived originally, but I'd say that that's never enough. I think the thing that it's the level of engagement is the fundamental thing, because beyond all the negative perceptions of Fraser Avenue, there was an embedded community, many of whom have lived there for a very long time. His families have grown up there, and there was a fundamental drive and energy to improve their lives and make things better. But it was the engagement process that tapped into all that and went a huge amount of detail to help engender the sense of belonging, going through a range of house types. And I think the thing that's probably different about this place compared with some others is most of the residents were existing tenants, and it was not just a case of, it was a case of gradual renewal. It's being done in phases. Half of it's demolished so far. We're in the second phase of 4 at the moment. The first one's completed, the second one's on site. But it's this process of gradual renewal, and how that, a very sensitive approach to decanting, and how that was all managed by Kingdom was extremely carefully managed. Looking at individual, it even went to the detail of looking at individual layouts of properties with individual tenants, many of whom had special needs of one form or another, how the houses were adapted to that, even down to people picking the floor finishes and the colour of the front door. This ran all the way through, and there was the engagement on the quality of environment they were in, because there was a particular issue, as I said, with heating and damp from the previous properties. So the first phase was built with a breathable wall system, which is currently being valued by the GSA as a research project. Second phase isn't, for cost reasons, but what is happening is that the 2 phases are being monitored by GSA, so that there will be a quantifiable outcome at the end of that. To help make the case, it's more expensive to do this, about 10% more expensive to help make the case to do that in the future. And this level of continuous engagement ran all the way through the construction process, and helping residents understand how their new homes work. There was everybody got instruction on how the heating worked, and a whole range of different aspects to that. So I think it's probably the most kind of comprehensive level of support I've ever seen from a housing association. Kingdom really did an extraordinary job. So back to the more structural stuff and the softer stuff, this diagram shows the fundamental shift from the canyon to something which was much more broken up in scale. Broke Fraser Avenue up from being one continuous street to being a series of streets and spaces. This village green in the centre. The shops were relocated to the very north end, so that they were used not just by the residents of Fraser Avenue, which pretty much had become the case, and latterly to now that they're almost in a way the mixing place where all the surrounding neighbourhoods, and it's right on the route to the school. And that's an important part again of shifting perceptions. So this is the not built yet, but this is a central green space in the very, very heart of the new Fraser Avenue. These are the new shops which have been relocated, and Stevens the Bakers is there right now selling some very fine varieties. But this is a gathering place. We wanted to make this a gathering place, which is why it's this pavilion type structure with shelter around it. Previously, there was an issue with young people hanging around outside the shops, but we actually thought it was important that people hung around, people who lived there hung around, and there was actually someone to go and have shelter, and also, as I said, a gathering place for the wider community. So this is a study model we did at planning stage. Still like showing this slide, as I think it kind of captures the change, the shift from Fraser Avenue as it was to Fraser Avenue as being proposed. What characterizes it is breaking up the scale of it, creating a much smaller scale of streets and spaces. Some very simple moves in a way of actually trying to give everybody their own front door, their own private garden space to the front and the rear, even the flats within it. And there's a whole range of different types. Our cottage type flats, so they still have their own front door at ground level, and you go up the stairs to the upper level. This was a very determined move to take that approach of giving everybody their own front door to almost an extreme as part of the to really kind of break the negative inertia of what was there before, and help to bring about this shift of perceptions and fundamentally to one where there was a sense of belonging. We were quite influenced by looking at Rosyth Garden City. Robin, who was a project architect in this, grew up in Dunfermline, was fascinated by Rosyth Garden City. That informed quite a lot of the thinking. Also, just studying the palette of what was around it. That informed a lot of what we looked at, but also how you design the frontages of these new homes as a place that people would begin to colonize and sit outside and really kind of engage with each other. And that is one area which has been particularly successful. These are slides from last year. We're going to go back again post-lockdown and take some more photographs of the landscape, which Rankin Fraser did a fantastic job on. Hopefully that has matured quite a bit from it was just in when we took these. But this gives you a feel of the character and nature of it. It's breaking up the scale of it quite a degree, bringing variety within to it, but also a cohesive character to it as well. You know, it is a new neighbourhood. We enjoyed looking at the Garden City and enjoyed that feel to it. I think that it's fair to say that what has been very gratifying about this is it has been colonised. People have enjoyed living there. This engendering the sense of belonging has been actually something that's been really one of the main achievements here. And a lot of that was picked up in, first of all, the NDS case study, and also the Housing 2040 workshop, which was hosted by NDS last year in collaboration with the Scottish Government. That was essentially a feedback session with local residents, and really everybody was involved in the project. So I think that this document here, the yellow cover document, in a way is, I think the appraisal is very good appraisal. The case study appraisal is very good, but I think the really interesting document is this one, which does bring in the residents' feedback. And there was a number of tenants there who were involved in the whole project all the way through. There was ourselves, there was Fife Council, Kingdom Housing Association, contractor as well, NDS hosted it, and we went through a range of things. But I think the tenant feedback was probably the most interesting bit, and I think on reflection, it was probably the most gratifying morning I've ever had in my career, because there were certain simple statements which just gave a really strong indication that a lot of things that everybody set out to achieve had some success. One of the comments was, "It's great the children are playing on the street again. I haven't seen that since, you know, the 1970s. Somebody said, "Well, everybody's talking to each other again," and before the regeneration, it didn't. And one woman said, "Well, I feel so much better. I'm off my meds now." And everybody, you know, burst out laughing at that point. But I think it was just those few words actually capture something very powerful, which is that this kind of approach and this kind of multifaceted approach can make a significant difference And I think the interesting thing to reflect on is, well, how might that case be made? Because the ANDS document makes a very strong case, and there's various representatives from government there, and there's a very clear message coming out of it. But I think my main observation of it, as I said at the beginning, is that I think the success of Fraser Avenue is a wide group of people doing a lot of small things very, very well, but doing it with the aim of achieving a common goal. And although we're proud of what we designed here, I don't think it would have been the success it has been so far without everything that Kingdom and Fife had done. I have to single out Julie Watson at Kingdom, who was just lived and breathed it all through very many years. At so many levels, there was that softer side of it was fundamental to really bringing about this huge shift from people feeling disenfranchised from where they live to developing a sense of belonging. And I think that for Fraser Avenue is a fundamental thing. And when I was putting these slides together, I found this, which was actually from our bid in 2014, and this is what we were setting out to achieve. I'm very pleased, and I have to say pleasantly surprised, that actually a lot of these things were actually achieved, not necessarily down to our endeavours, but everybody pulling together under that common goal. So this holistic approach to placemaking, so it's all very well having a master plan, but it's a lot of the softer things that go with it that actually are the key thing to the success, and how people actually engage with each other to achieve that. Because these feelings of belonging, feeling engaged, not feeling disenfranchised, before you even get into the kind of mental health and physical health issues, must be quantifiable in some way. And I think it'd be interesting to consider whether there's a step beyond the great work that ANDS and the government have done on the case studies so far. But how might you actually quantify this in some way? Because there's so many places like this throughout the country, and it does involve a lot of money doing all of this. But what is the cost of all that for with the wider societal costs? I think that's worthy of exploration. This is Fraser Avenue. We've built about a quarter of it so far. Next quarter's on site right now, and the whole thing will be built out in the next 3 or 4 years or so. So it's been a great one to be involved in, but as I said, it's been an enormous team effort by a whole range of people involved. And I think probably I'd single out Kingdom, and particularly Julie is the key person who's actually made it all happen. Thank you.